It's Lucy and Jeff going for walks and talk about banksters and Bitcoin and the apocalypse and stuff. It's Lucy and Jeff and tacos and kisses.
How you doing today, Lucy? Well, pretty good. Just going for a walk with Wackums. Oh, there goes Wackums. What do you think of the propaganda, Lucy? Well, I don't watch television programming. I don't care what the government or the media says. They're all a bunch of cunts. I just go for my walk with Wackums, eat my tacos, and give my kisses. That's the best way to be, Lucy. Just ignore it all. The propaganda. It's always been pretty bad my whole life, but never quite as bad as it is now. It's unbelievable. It's just non-stop propaganda. Lucky, that's not your house. Lucky. Come on, Lucky, Lucy. Lucky. It's not your house. Yeah, he doesn't get that. He's like a narco-communist. He doesn't know anything. He's just a baby. Yeah, speaking of that, I watched the 5th episode of The Anarchist. I actually have some things to say about that, but I'll save it for my personal channel and probably at some later date. I might even wait till after the last episode, because there's definitely some information that was left out of there that actually most people don't know. But anyway, subscribe to my personal channels and I'll probably have something up on there at some point. But we got to get into this. There's so much stuff going on. I see Alex Jones. You know, I have to say, he's put out tons of great information over like decades, really. It's pretty incredible. And like there's that Alex Jones is right coin jar sort of a thing. Most of the stuff he said, like 95% plus, that a lot of people thought he was crazy on, turned out to be right. And as a bit of a, I said fig leaf before, it's actually olive branch. As a bit of an olive branch to Alex Jones. The reason I kind of like didn't like him for a while, lucky, is when Trump was running for president, he was like so pro-Trump that as an anarchist, I was just like, okay, I'm not listening to him all that much anymore. But I think he's kind of like changed on that quite a bit.
I'm so sick of fucking Donald Trump, man. God, I'm fucking sick of him.
But anyway, it doesn't really matter because he's been banned everywhere. He was actually like the first major person to get like almost completely wiped off the internet. And then soon after that, most people who were speaking similar type stuff, the truth for the most part, were banned pretty much everywhere, including everyone. David Icke, Max Egan, myself, everybody. So it's noticeable to see what they're still doing to him. And so they had a total show trial. They actually didn't let him defend himself at all. Like, that's not a trial. It was like basically what you hear about in like North Korea or something. They just said, okay, you're charged with this. And he's like, well, can I defend myself? They're like, no. And they're like, here's what you're being charged with. And they said it's because he lied about Sandy Hook being not what they said it was, which it 100% wasn't what they said it was. Then they said, okay, you're found guilty. And said, Alex Jones has been ordered to pay nearly $50 million in damages to the parents of Sandy Hook's massacre victims for claiming the 2012 shooting was staged, which it looks like it was. But of course, the UN has said you can't talk about conspiracies like that, so that's now not allowed. Anyway, meanwhile, you gotta love the propaganda. Speaking of propaganda, and the total Orwellian bills that they put into the US, they always put a name on them. And the name almost always is the exact opposite of what it is. Like, for example, the Patriot Act. They put that in after 9/11, after Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and George W. Bush and George Bush all planned 9/11. So they locked down the entire country, and it's been locked down ever since under something called the Patriot Act. And now the FBI considers patriots to be domestic terrorists. But the act, of course, was called the Patriot Act. Well, they just came out with a new act. Of course, as you know, inflation in terms of the US dollar is really getting to Banana Republic levels. So they had to come out and do a bill for it, of course. And it's called the Inflation Reduction Act. So you might be thinking, oh, it's an Inflation Reduction Act. So are they going to limit the Federal Reserve from printing money? And are they going to massively reduce the amount of money the government spends? Because that's what causes inflation. No. They're going to spend $700 billion of freshly printed up Federal Reserve notes that basically people in the US are supposed to pay back at some point to fight inflation. And apparently the vote was like 50-50. And so there was a tiebreaker. And who got the tiebreaker? Cackling Kamala Harris.
The yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the bill, as amended, is passed.
And it's been interesting over the last year or so with inflation across the world in terms of government fiat currencies at like almost hyperinflation levels almost everywhere now. All the central banksters who generally cause it all have all been like talking about how they never saw it coming. Of course, Paul Krugman. Oh, I can never get enough of Paul Krugman, that expert on economics from the New York Slimes, who came out recently and said, he doesn't know how, but he didn't see it coming. Yeah, they never see it coming. We always do. And a lot of time they're like, no one could have saw this coming. I've been saying this for like 12 years. Doug Casey's been saying it for like 40 years, and it just keeps happening. It's because it's obvious. So they're going to increase inflation. Basically, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act. It should be called the Hyperinflation Induction Act. It's going to induce hyperinflation. It's $700 billion. And can anyone guess who's going to get most of that money? Basically, the World Economic Forum. Too good. And Joe Biden. I'm here to crash bikes and economies, and I'm all out of rice. When the government causes inflation by printing tons of cash, and then tries to solve inflation by printing even more cash. So how does the Inflation Reduction Act help reduce inflation? That's the neat part, Joe. It doesn't. Is this that bill that will make inflation worse? Actually, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's meant to fight inflation. Yeah, this is it. I can only think of one person off the top of my head who knows less about economics and how money works than Janet Yellen and Paul Krugman. And that's Bernie Sanders, a communist who spent lots of time in Cuba. He's always been saying how great it is. He just a few years ago, he was, what a great example Venezuela is for the world. Like, he's just completely knows nothing about economics. But even he, of all people, has figured out this has nothing to do with fixing inflation. In fact, well, he says it won't really change it. See, he doesn't understand money. When you print up nearly $1 trillion more in Federal Reserve notes, that's what inflation is. And it's all happening. But even Bernie sees it, of all people. But yeah, I think that's all we wanted to say today, right, Lucy? Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it all up. I use that pirate chain. I'm a big pirate chain fan. We got some Monero. And, but really, you know, I gotta admit, I'm all about the tacos. And if you want to get some tacos, we can go with Lucky, and then I'll give everyone curses.